um, what your expectations are of world schooling. World schooling, obviously we know that world schooling, most of us think that it incorporates some sort of travel, but we're in a time of COVID. So what are your expectations of world schooling now? It'll be just a really sort of informal, interesting way to start the conversation.
And you'd like everyone to type that in
the chat.
In the chat, great. Hi everyone, this is just a reminder that we're recording this session.
Wow. Iswari, did I say your name correctly? Iswari? Is that right?
Yeah, I also go by Christy. I have a couple of names.
Would you prefer Christy?
Sure.
Okay.
Either way.
So Christy, what was your plan? Your plan was to travel all around the U.S.?
Yeah, we had a spring trip planned. We were driving from California all the way to South Carolina. And we got as far as Tucson and turned around. But we'd done a trip in the fall of 2019 to the states of New York and Pennsylvania in our RV. It took us 3 months. And I saw it was our first year homeschooling, and I saw my 13-year-old son just come alive. You know, there's nothing like actually visiting a historical site.
Right.
And the things that he liked actually surprised me. Like, for example, the Women's Rights Museum in upstate New York, where they had the first women's rights conference. He was entranced by that, and it was just really, really inspiring to see him connect with things in a way that you can't do in a book.
Yeah, it's powerful, isn't it? Yeah. So your expectation was to travel.
Yes.
Nationally, and you came back to California as a result of COVID. Okay.
Right. And we also just typically in our homeschool, I like to do a lot of performing arts. My son's a dancer, so we would do ballet and theater and
Right. I mean, everything is it's a dance.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm glad that you said that dance is actually part of your quote unquote curriculum or interest, but
right.
Managing all of those opportunities, no matter if you're living a stationary life or if you're traveling, it's a dance, negotiating, time management, juggling, it's all of those things for sure.
Right.
Yeah, I get it. Samrana? Oh boy.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay, great. Yes. Samrana, so your expectation are ways to learn from the world. So nature, society, etc. Okay, whatever's open these times.
I guess typically we would, we like doing ranger programs and going to national parks or state parks and doing tours with the rangers, but obviously that's not happening right now. So we're just trying to think of creative ways to still learn in the real world. And I guess it's going to take some creativity.
Right,
so I'm here
right.
for ideas.
We're going to talk about strategies for that today, but it's interesting. We've only had 2 people respond, and both people have been looking at world schooling as exploring their country that they're in. I don't know if I'm going to assume that you're from the United States. Maybe you are, maybe you're not. But that's,
yeah, we're in Pennsylvania.
Okay. But that's currently where you are as well, right?
Yeah. So I mean, especially this year, where my daughter's in 4th grade, so in fourth grade you do California history, so we were actually looking forward to going out and learning from the places that we read about and just make it more hands-on, but I don't know how possible that's going to be.
Right. Okay, great. Barbara says, I'll be assisting with my grandson's crisis schooling. I'm so glad that you called it crisis schooling, boy.
I learned that term here at the conference.
Mhm. Let's see. Okay, so you were an unschooling mom. You facilitated
I was.
many years
I
ago.
started this conference 30 years ago.
Oh my God.
Well, I'm so glad it's still going on.
Oh my God, that is so amazing. And
Yeah.
now you're an unschooling grandma.
Well, kind of. He goes to a charter school, and of course, now they're online 4 hours a day on a computer. Oh my God.
Right. Okay, so we're going to
But
talk about, go ahead.
I was going to say I traveled with my girls all the time when we were homeschooling. So I would like to give that to him, but obviously we can't do it. So bringing other resources into our experience would be great.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to talk about ways, of course, that will involve the computer, but also things that you can do as a family to create international experiences from home
Okay.
right now. So that'll be really great. Awesome. Thank you for chiming in. And Lika says, did I say your name right? Lika?
Yes, you got it.
Okay. And with the comma, I assumed that your last name was first and your first name is Lika, correct?
Yes, sorry, it takes a minute to unmute, but yes, my name is Lika. Thank you for checking.
Okay. So you're wondering if it's possible to take your daughter across the country this school year, even for a shorter time, given that COVID and the need for Wi-Fi to do her classes. So Lika, are you coming to homeschooling or, as Barbara said, crisis schooling for the first time, or have you been homeschooling and this is just a new way of expressing your homeschooling experience?
Well, I've homeschooled intermittently because I don't really have the support to do it, and I've always worked full time. So I've homeschooled intermittently. So this year, my daughter and I were supposed to go to China, and I got a job teaching in China, but last minute, of course, I can't get in because of the visa situation and the political situation. So I'm going to take this opportunity to homeschool her the whole year. And the thought was to try to travel with her. I don't think we can travel abroad, just given all the quarantining for now. But how about across the country? I don't know if it's possible, how that would look, if we'd get into some difficulty. And I know that that's something new, so you don't necessarily have the answer, but maybe some thoughts, somewhere to start.
You're right. I don't have the answer about what's going to happen, and I don't really have. I'm not an authority on the legalities of moving around the United States, and in fact, I'm not even in the United States right now. So it's just. I mean, everything has shifted. Everything has changed. So I don't know what it's going to look like. I hope that you'll be able, Lika, to travel across the United States at least, to be able to have those immersive experiences. I really do. But today we're going to talk about looking beyond our home country. We're going to talk about why being a global citizen or a global thinker is important. And we're going to come at it from some perspectives that might surprise you a little bit. Yeah, I just wanted to read other people's responses first. So Molly says she has a 4- and 7-year-old, and she's new to homeschooling after 2 years of schooling. 2 years of school, and I assume you mean conventional school. We would love to incorporate travel into our curriculum, and we'd love to hear ideas on how to do that. So wonderful. Normally, my son and I have given talks at so many conferences about world schooling. And for those of you that have been following our journey for a while, this won't be news to you. We love traveling, and that has become our educational style. My name is Lainie, and Miro, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hello, everyone. I'm the son. I'm Miro. I realize I haven't said a single word yet, but I welcome you all to this session, and hopefully we can have a really great conversation and find some, some clarity.
So we left the United States. We're originally from Los Angeles, and we left the United States when Miro had just turned 10. We had decided when he was 9, and Miro is now 21. So during those 12 years, we've been, for the most part, by most conventional standards, homeless. We have been what we like to call location independent, and we have just been traveling based on our desire to go from one place to the next. We travel very low budget. We are not millionaires, and in fact, we generally don't have 2 nickels to rub together. We're not somebody who's come from money. We're not somebody who, well, actually, we did come not from money, but we came from, well, okay, so I owned a business, and then the economy crashed in 2008 in California. I'm sure you guys remember that. So that's what propelled us to take off on the journey. And we were just going to leave for 1 year. I did own a business. I did make money. But all that has changed in the last 12 years. We left with savings for 1 year of travel. But as you can imagine, that has been long gone. It's been 12 years, like I said. So we're not, just want to be clear, we did not prance around the world with a trust fund. We worked a little bit, we lived locally, we volunteered, we got very involved in and immersed ourselves in the cultures that we lived in. And we did a lot of different things, like shifting our relationship to consumerism. We redefined what education meant to us. We grew, I was gonna say we grew up together. I mean, I raised my son, but I really shifted as a human being as well because of the journey and the adventure that we had taken on together. And so normally we come to conferences and we talk about how fantastic and life transforming and how the world is this rich environment to learn from, and people get excited and they, think about selling their possessions and packing their bags and taking off and incorporating travel as part of their educational journey. Well, that's not going to happen right now. So we're going to talk today about some of the foundational lessons that we learned, and primarily, like I said in the beginning, what it means to be a person who thinks from a global perspective and what a global citizen really means. I'm not talking, I just learned today what the conspiracy theory of the one world government is. I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about approaching it from those perspectives. I'm talking about being a citizen of the planet and part of humanity and recognizing our own humanity in everybody else who happens to share the planet with us. So that's what I mean about being a global citizen.
I'm going to interject here. I actually gave an interview just today on what it means to be a global citizen. So the definition is very fresh in my mind. So basically, the well understood definition of global citizenship is a matter of identity. It's the mindset where you're able to view yourself and view others through the scope of humanity first and nationality or culture second. And it's basically the mindset that you are able to acknowledge and identify everybody as part of a broader group of people, the broadest group of people actually, which is humans, because that's all of us. And then to go into, you know, obviously I'm not saying to erase culture, I'm not saying to erase tradition, but you go into that secondarily to understand. And that's basically how global citizenship is usually defined in the mainstream, I guess you could say.
So in order to be a global citizen, one has to recognize that we have very specific worldviews. And as somebody who has not traveled, and I was somebody who hadn't traveled a lot before. I mean, I had done a little bit of traveling, but before we really started our journey, it was a very different perspective. And as somebody who looks at the world really from a US-centric perspective, your worldview is going to be colored in that way. And we would never ask anybody to give up a preference or point of view or what we call the worldview. We're asking, in order to become a world citizen, you've got to recognize that you do have filters as we look at the world. So Miro and I are both wearing glasses. And for those of you that have ever had an optometry, yes, you've got glasses on too, who has gone to an eye doctor, an optometrist, you know, they put that big machine over you and they put the lenses in, take it out, more lenses in and take it out. I like to think of that as an analogy of how we look at the world. We don't necessarily recognize that this glass that I'm looking through in order to see the world is important, but it actually is. We tend to ignore the glass that's sitting there, but that really is the thing that colors our world. So to give ourselves a step back and recognize that we do have preferences, and they're based on gender, family, religion, nationality, the town we come from, the ethnic group we identify with, our friends, our political perspective, our values even color the way that we see the world. And it's all okay to recognize that we have those things. And Miro and I started talking about worldviews when he was 10, because it was important for us to recognize that we were seeing the first place that we went to, the very first place when we left the United States, was where I am right now, which is Mexico. And I remember stepping out of the plane and the hot, humid air hitting me in the face. And we had overpacked backpacks that were too heavy. And I had a big one in the front and one in the back that towered over my, you know, the back of my head. And I remember the heat and the humidity and the smells and the, you know, the fragrances of the food and the colors and the fastness of the people and language that I didn't understand. It was disorienting. And I just remember the first night, you remember this, Miro, I just sobbed. I just like, what the fuck did I just do? Like, for me, that everything was different. My lenses were so out of whack that I couldn't see that, I mean, like, I crack up thinking about that now. I'm sitting here in Mexico and I'm speaking Spanish, and I just went to the taco truck before Erica's talk to get some El Pastor tacos, so I wouldn't be, I mean, like, the comfort level that I have now is so incredibly different to the one that I had when we first started out. But as we first started to talk about worldviews, we started to create a little bit of distance between, well, I'm an American and, you know, I'm accustomed to this, and why can't I understand it? And they should be doing this, so I'm more comfortable. Like, that was my immediate processing. we all know from hearing me saying that you're probably thinking, oh, that privileged white woman is probably, you know, she needs to check her shit, right? You know, I get that. I get that. But that's who I was 12 years ago when I stepped off that plane. I couldn't process that these lenses going in, coloring me, no longer worked in the places that I had found myself. So starting to have the conversation with my son about worldviews was powerful, and that started to open up how we move through the world. And it's still like we're a couple of people that really talk philosophically a lot, and we dig deep into, you know, the nuances of experience and reality. But that became our habit of conversation. And that would probably be the first thing that we would recommend is, in order to become a global citizen or somebody who recognizes the connectivity between all humans, we've got to take a step back and own our shit and understand that our worldview is only one teeny finite way of seeing the world. Did you want to add something, Miro?
Yeah, I guess I could say more to put it in the context or the frame of like an educational upbringing. I could share a little bit about my experience of having grown up with this as a part of my, part of the conversation that we were always having. So basically, my mom just spoke about some of the preconceived like biases, right? Some of the things that she had stuck with her, the conditioning from a past life, right? And I definitely had some of that by the time that we had left. I was 10, but I definitely didn't have that same conditioning, at least not to the extent that she had it. And so I think my experience was very normalized. Having grown up in many different countries and with exposure to so many different cultures throughout the years, my perspective has definitely been very broadened. And I think that it's actually been a really amazing vehicle for me to learn so many essential skills and so many, well, yeah, I guess skills would be the right way to say. And I guess I'm more talking about soft skills, but I really hate that phrase because I think that the soft skills are actually some of the most important skills that we can learn as humans. They're the most integral to our success and are really more so our harmony and, our ability to live a happy life. But I basically wanted to say that the experience of somebody who is growing up with this as a part of their upbringing, it's really a fantastic transformation. It's something that I am so happy about in my life, and I feel so, I don't know, I get flustered. I get really emotional when I start talking about it. And I feel really blessed. So I guess I just wanted to add that, my perspective to the conversation and let you guys know what a kid who went through it thought about it at that time.
So I want to know how many of you here are looking to bring the world around you as a place where you can learn now, today, in a time of COVID? Or are you looking, so that would be option one, or option two would be looking to eventually travel and add travel as part of your educational sort of platform after travel bans lift. So is it one or two? You can either give me a finger if you're on video or put it in. Okay, so it's now, we have one now, we have two for later. Okay. Okay, both is good too, of course. Yes, Hannah. Okay, three both. Yeah. Okay. So this will help us as we, sort of talk, as we start to go a little bit deeper in terms of what we can share. And we want to make sure that this is a dialogue And this is not a monologue with just Miro and I. We're really here to serve and support you. And okay, so we have some ones, both. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about kind of what is at the foundation of what's necessary to learn from the world around you. Before we go a little bit deeper into worldviews, but worldviews is absolutely one of the recognition of worldviews and the conversations and dialogues as a family about worldviews. That is absolutely at the foundation. But just below that is, and this will be something that's important to those of you that are interested in number 2, which is taking your family act out on the road and learning from the road. So just below worldviews is the importance of defining your family culture. Miro and I are going to talk on Sunday, and we're going to go through how to do this in another talk. And this is a talk that we've given for years, and I've coached families in our Worldschooling community, dozens and dozens, hundreds of families about this, because if you're starting to travel, you're together 24/7, and you've got to have some of these things in place in order to figure out how you're going to navigate the world, navigate decision making, and navigate learning. So having dialogue around those things, and like I said, on Sunday we're going to go through that in detail. It's super important. So that sits at the foundation of everything. Yeah, Miro, did you?
And you know what? I would also go as far as to say that this facet, this specific part, is just as relevant for families who are just choosing to stay at home and stay within their own communities and try to expand their worldviews and learn from the world at large from their base. I think that defining your family culture can do so much for the way that you learn as a family, because, you know, obviously there's been a lot of studies done on, you know, the benefits and the effects of social learning. There's been, you know, a lot done on the benefits and the effects of play as learning. So all of these things are affected by the culture that you decide on and you collaboratively create as a family.
Yeah, thank you. And also, the reason why Jocelyn asked for me to give this talk, not this one, but the one on Sunday about family culture, is because many people are coming to homeschooling for the first time because of the pandemic, and they don't actually have a defined culture and understand what is needed to be together. I mean, you would think that families that love each other, great, they're fine together, but if you don't have practice doing that, or the vocabulary or the tools to create dialogue around that, it becomes difficult. I mean, most of us just, throw caution to the wind and just hope it all works out because we love each other. But having tools to help guide you or to define, especially in a time of crisis, and even in the best of times, when families first start traveling, they think that my family's great, we got this. But you know what? The husband's been working, the kids went off to school, and nobody has practiced being together 24/7. And so that's why I teach this to our Worldschooling families. So it's just a little something to think about now in terms of what sits at the bottom of everything. It's family culture and understanding that you've got the language to talk about how we're making decisions, how we're, what our governance looks like, how we, negotiate. Those sorts of things are really important to define, even with the littles, right? So, okay, so we've got family culture sitting at the base. On top of that, we've got starting to create conversations about worldviews. And there's lots of things that you can do as a family to start pulling those sort of lenses off and talking about them. and recognizing that certain scenarios and certain not decisions but interactions are colored by the way that you see the world. How are you framing things? How has society around you expected you to frame things? Do those two things differ? Is somebody who's leading a life based on a different set of values but from the same location viewing the same thing very differently? And I guess we'll give the example of like the Ecuador example. You want to talk about that just to kind of illustrate, Miro, the different ways
Sure.
of seeing? Okay.
We really love this example because this is a real world experience that we shared on one of our teen retreats, actually. And so one of the things that we did while we were in Ecuador with a group of teens is we did some volunteer work with the conservationists that were working on in this beach town in Ecuador that were attempting to basically tag and study the whale population. And they were doing everything that they could to better, increase the quality of the water and, all of that stuff. And so we were working hands-on with them, and their perspective was very much one of conservation. It was one of empirical facts. It was one of, this belief that they were doing the right thing. And that's definitely one perspective. But what's so great about this example is we also worked with, or actually we didn't work with them, but we had face-to-face experience every single day with the fishermen of the village as well. And it was this complete dichotomy, right? Because there's this social, there's this huge social divide between all of these two different groups. It's the conservationists and the fishermen who rely upon the ocean to provide for their families. And we basically came to the conclusion with our group of teens that there was no one right or wrong way to look at the situation or to look at what was happening. We spoke about it every single night, and we couldn't come to a conclusion of one objective way to look at it. And that's because we were able to explore the situation from these two different perspectives that were so, vastly different. And I think that was, I really like that example as a real world example, because, obviously, I feel like on paper, if you were to say, if you removed all of the context and you were to read about this in a textbook or in an article, and you were told all the points of how the conservationists were doing the right thing and, all of that, it kind of removes the human element of, what actually is happening. And I think through us having that experience, we were really able to understand that it was a lot more nuanced and complex, and that there's more than one way to look at the world, to look at what's happening, and there's more than one way to be right about it.
And they were all Ecuadorians.
Yeah.
And so as a visitor, our perspective was, quite different on top of all of that. But as somebody who does not come from the particular culture that we were visiting, we always had to recognize that our perspective was somewhere way down below, those of the people that live there. And I don't know about you, but I already hear that there are some caveats to that, some red flags. There are some, huge potential conversations to be had among ourselves and among digging into our own worldviews and understanding what values we're aligned with as we move through the planet. That also, by the way, is part of the family culture workshop, is defining what your family values are. So knowing that if you're a family that is, you stand for justice and equality, what does that look like through the lens of looking at another culture, and having the ability among your family to have those deep discussions. You are, guess what? You're world schooling at that point. So that would be your first entrance into looking at the world around you, is get clear with your own shit. Get clear. I'm sorry. I'm used to talking to teens and I realize I'm swearing a lot. So, okay. I just got a thumbs up. It's okay. Get aligned. Get in a place where the dialogue among your family unit, which is where you're learning from, right? You're learning as a parent. You are facilitating learning with your children. You've got to have that dialogue going back and forth in order, and practicing that dialogue about the worldviews, the values, and the lenses. Like, keep talking about that. Keep talking about it. Start from your home. Start about, your next door neighbor and your worldview. Look at the differences and then look at the similarities and find the points where it's similar and put labels on it. And the moment you start, I know it sounds contrary to a lot of people, but putting labels or naming those things, it helps you and your kids to become more worldly. You're practicing defining the nuances in perception. And boy, that was a huge conceptual statement there, but it's a practice, and that's a skill that will take you and your children around the world, whether it's from your own living room or actually traveling. That will help you become an ethical traveler. That will help you to become the definition of the world citizen that Miro said at the beginning of this talk. So, okay, I can't speak, enough about worldviews. Oh, I do want to, can I give one more example? Go ahead, honey, go ahead.
No, you go ahead. I'm gonna segue. So you go first.
I just wanted to talk about like this experience that we had. Another experience recognizing worldviews was when we were in Colombia. We went to this town called San Cipriano, and we didn't know much about this town. And we basically learned everything while we were there. Now, this town, it was filled with people that were taken from Africa and the Caribbean, and they became slaves. And this particular region of Colombia was of, the residents there were of African descent. So I think the Spanish African combination, but this area of Colombia was very segregated. And when we went, we were told that the only way to get into this really special town was to take a retrofitted motorcycle that had like 4 wheels that sat on top of the train tracks, and they built out of plywood these little seats so we could sit on them, but it was driven by a motorcycle, and it goes down the railroad tracks. And we were warned, if there is a train coming, you need to jump off. And if you're over a bridge, oh well. So if you're over the lake, you are jumping off. You make sure you get off this little thing, because you'll get smashed by the train. So that was one of our we have video of this, and this was one of our really scary experiences. But we got into this town, and it was a jungle town that was totally isolated. And the people in the town were very, very poor. And they relied on the nature around them, which was this massive nature reserve. And it was the townspeople took us in, and they created a space for us to stay in their homes. And they fed us, and their sons became our guides, and we went tubing in the jungles, and we learned from their culture. We went with machetes and cut fruit, like these big breadfruits, and we ate fresh fish that we caught. And it was just this incredible connecting experience. But when we left San Cipriano, and it was just filled with heart and connection and love. And Miro was, I think you were like 11. And I remember I've got pictures of you with these bamboos doing sword fights with the village boys. And you guys colored your bamboo like swords together. And it just was like, it was just pure joy being there. But we learned about the dark side of this town, and because Colombia and the areas of Colombia that were primarily of African descent, they were very impoverished, very poor. They were also, the people that lived there were exploited. And the land was exploited. They started blocking off parts of the river and started to mine there. And then the big mining companies would come in and isolate these communities even further. So now there's no train going in or out, there's no roads, there's no access to medicine, to a lot of things, because their mode of transportation through the river was completely cut off, because, you know, they're mining now for silver and for gold. And the town itself, and they did a really good job keeping this information from us, but the town itself was riddled with violence. Those that strongly believed that the jungle, the nature needed to be preserved and protected were murdered. And many of the young men would actually there were two choices. You were either murdered or you left the town to go work for the miners. And so there was like all of this stuff happening below the surface, and our understanding was a lot different after we left the town. Yet here we are, still colored by our own lenses. We have our own perspectives of what's just and what's right. And it took me many years of letting go of the judgment of those men that went to go work for the miners. You know, I thought, oh, they're traitors to their people, must stand up to those doing wrong. And one day I just took a big exhale and I realized that I was sitting in judgment, had my lenses. I didn't say anything, obviously, but in my mind, I'm thinking, those young men should have stayed back and fought. And then I realized, wait a minute, I've never had to fight for my survival or for my, healthcare or, just basic survival. I could not step into their shoes, and I should take these lenses away and in fact stand side by side by them, whatever their choices, and not be in judgment. And so we all have this work to do constantly. We have an idea of what is right, what is just, and even going back to that foundation of what our particular values are, our own values guide us. Well, what do we do when we're out in the world and the world presents us with something that is not, ideal to look at the world through my lens? How do we loosen that? And we're always a work in progress. I would say every single person, like I said, I've traveled for 12 years and I've had these conversations over and over and over, and I still am clouded at times by my own lenses. So start those conversations young with your family. And Miro, I've been yakking, so go ahead.
I just want to say that it was through this exploration of our own worldviews and of our own beliefs that we were able to redefine our relationship to a lot of things. And I think that is probably one of the next tools that is really important to world schooling. It is having a fluidity in your beliefs, not feeling that you need to hold on to a belief just because you held it at one point, but because it's something that serves you and it's something that works for you and you're helping, or in helping you make sense of the world. And so it was through understanding our own worldviews and our own background that we were able to redefine our relationship to a lot of things. It was also how we were able to tell the difference between preferences or want and needs. I think this was also something that was intrinsically tied to our relationship to consumerism, our relationship to, you know, that part of our culture that we had come from. And we were able to really understand what our needs were. And that's something that became integral when we were out on the road, when we were traveling, when we didn't have those things. Suddenly we were living our life without what we thought we needed at one point in time, or at least what we were told that we needed. And that has been probably the most transformational thing. You know, obviously not only for me, because I grew up in it, but for my mom, somebody who even was, you know, it was part of her profession. She worked in branding and marketing. And so this was like such a huge part of our journey. And I think that that's one of the really big tools. It's identifying where your comfort zones are, where those boundaries end and where they begin, and understanding what it is that we do truly need. You cut everything else away. What is a need and what is a want? I think that has been a huge tool that Worldschooling has been able to give us. And I feel amazing about that.
So, you know, we tend to go off on our Worldschooling presentation, and I want to get to some of these tools. So ways that the people that said number one is most important to them, which is traveling right now from their pandemic, you know, sort of isolation from their living room, or you can apply these things if you are trying to travel nationally for the preference of number two. But for those that are home now and want to bring the world into their living room, I'm going to make a couple of suggestions. The first one is start looking into stories. Stories as an orator of history, myth, tradition, rituals, and rites. That's the first place you're going to get I mean, it's going to be superficial, but that's the first place where you dip your toe into really starting to understand the ethos, the personality, the ethics, the values of that culture. And when we talk about culture, we have to recognize indigenous First Peoples cultures. That's where I would recommend that you start. I wouldn't start looking at modern South Africa, for example. I wouldn't look at the country. I mean, this is important, but I would start researching as a family as much as you can if South Africa was on your radar, or Peru, or wherever, you know, the country that you're interested in starting off. And then go into researching and finding who are the first people, what are they called, what are the ethnic groups called, and start there, and start from as far back as you possibly can go. This will take you into myth. This will take you into, you know, rites, rituals, traditions. And if you're, you know, focused on a particular country, it'll then bubble to the surface and inform the way that culture, modern culture, is experienced today. So start there, start with stories, seek out storytellers, go to children's books that are based on tradition. Oh, Melinda, thank you so much for joining us. And I wanted to make sure that this was more of a dialogue than a presentation. So pretty soon we're going to stop talking and start conversing. So I want to just, how much time do we have? I know we have, how much time do we have left?
We're going until 7:30, correct?
So we have 8 minutes?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my gosh. We talk a lot, don't we? Okay. So storytelling, first peoples, you know, of a particular area. I would also say another tool that I wanted to offer to you as a family is have your family choose a country and live in that country for a week. Figure out what it means to live in modern France or you know, ancient France. What does it feel like to wear the food? Did I just say wear the food? Wear the clothes. What does it feel like to eat the food? You know, can you cook the food? You know, pick a country and live in it and do everything in your power to be in that country and to have that experience. This is a lovely experience, especially for real littles. You know, you can approach it from many different perspectives, especially with the food.
And I would also add something that I think a lot of people kind of neglect to, or not even neglect to notice, but fail to notice in this time of COVID. It's a very isolating time for a lot of us. It's a time where we feel like we are cut off from the rest of the world. But there's something that we all have in common, and there's something that brings us all closer together, and that is that we're all feeling that way. This is a global pandemic. There are people in other countries that are also experiencing these same feelings. And I think that in some ways that enables us to, it forms a bridge. It enables us to reach out and say, well, you know, my family really wants to know about the culture of this place. What better way than to learn from somebody who is from that culture, somebody who lives there, somebody who lives within it. And I think that more than anything else, especially obviously, you know, I think everybody is feeling maybe a little bit of Zoom burnout, you know, with everything going digitally. But I think that these are tools that we can use to connect to one another. We can cross those bridges and, you know, gap those cultural differences because we're all in this together and we're all feeling that. So I just wanted to say that.
I just wanted to pop in and let you guys know you do have till 7:45.
Yes. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Okay, so I really wanted to open up and have a dialogue. So what kind of thoughts do you have around worldviews, world schooling, you know, bringing cultures into your home? What's most useful for you now? Is it giving you resources to find international resources? Is it, what would be useful for you now? And just unmute yourself. Let's just talk.
Well, I'll start.
Okay.
Whoops.
Yeah. Okay. Barbara, I don't know if you are still speaking. We can't see you, but you're muted.
Looks like she disappeared.
I'm back.
Oh, there you
Okay,
are.
okay.
Yeah, our internet has been on and off today. Sorry about that.
Okay.
Okay, so when I traveled with my daughters before, it was always based on, we didn't think about it like stories, but that's what it was. So it's really kind of nice to put it into that context. So I was thinking about applying that to my grandson and letting him make the choices about where he would like to learn, because he's always been interested in maps and cultures and people stories. So I think this is perfect for him. And it can lay the foundation for our travels later.
Right.
Yeah.
What is he interested in?
Well, like I said, he's interested in geography. He loves military stories about heroes. So, which is weird. I mean, my girls were never asking for that, but I I tend to just buy him the books that will kind of sate his appetite for a topic. So we go in and out of these things. It's already
How old is he?
he is turning 10 in a week.
10.
Yeah.
So initially, some of the thoughts that I had may not be age appropriate. Perhaps we went to Wales and we hired a storyteller to tell us stories around the fire every night that we were there on this organic farm. And we learned so much about the battles between the different kingdoms of dragons. And we learned, stories about the fae, the fairies, and the stuff that they would do. It's not quite war or battle, but I think there might be some heroes in there. And I know Miro is well versed in Greek and Roman, and maybe myth is someplace where he can enter into one of the cultures.
Great idea. Yeah, great idea.
If he was older, I was going to suggest Poland. Poland is just, wow, the history will blow you away. And that's a country of resilience like I've never seen.
Oh, good. Okay.
But there's quite a bit of violence in that country. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't stay in he doesn't go to the violent places, but it's just about the heroic things that happen, I guess. Okay. What interests him more. Yeah.
Heroes. What do you think, Miro? You know where to go with heroes.
I personally love mythology. I always have. Mythology has been, for me, a way to make sense of the world and kind of like understand how we as humans compartmentalize. And I think the archetype and the relationship that we have to heroes is something that is ingrained within all of us somewhere. And I think that like there's so many places where that can take you, like starting to dive into something like archaeology, ancient history, mythology. It's
astronomy.
It's just something that really is a language or a set of tools.
Margot, you asked for resources. I'm going to give everybody, of course, there's an amazing resource. We have a Facebook group for World Schoolers. It's called We Are World Schoolers. And I invite everybody to go there. It's an amazing community. I work really hard at facilitating a safe space where we can all come at it with our own worldviews and be respectful. I also, everybody that's here in the Zoom, I'm going to put in a link. Miro and I launched a website, and it's filled with almost 100 interviews and articles and resources. And we built it as like a membership site for our World Schoolers community on Facebook. And I'm going to give everybody here a free 10 days as our gift. So all you have to do is go in, register, and you can access all of that content for free. And it'll also give you access to our our private membership club group. It's a Facebook group. And we do group coaching in there, and we do like mini courses and lots of stuff. So come enjoy for the next 10 days or whenever you register. That's our gift to you.
And our group that we host is completely free. It's open to absolutely everybody. We have something like close to 9,000 members
Yeah,
or
we're
so.
almost at 9,000.
And it's a very international community. We have families from all over the world. And so I really did resonate with that idea of, you know, family to family, like pen pals, right? I think that
That's
that
what
is
we
a fantastic idea. And we should, you know, probably just start up a thread on that, Mom. I think that'd be
Yeah.
a really, really great idea.
Let's
So
do it.
What was the website again? We are homeschooled. Oh,
We are worldschoolers.org, but I put the complimentary 10-day pass in the chat window here. Are you on Whova or are you on the Zoom?
I think I'm on Hoover right now. I've been
You are.
bouncing back and forth.
Okay, well, everybody on Zoom can see this. So send me a message through Whova and I'll send you the link. Just send me a private message and I'll send this. I'm not publishing this. This is my gift to you guys.
Okay.
But if you're not in the Zoom room and don't see it, do send me a private message. And then, like Miro said, the Facebook group, the big group, there's about 9,000 people in that now, and that's totally free.
And I just shared the link for that.
Okay, perfect.
It's, you know, we always like to say that we're not experts on the subject. We're only experts on our own experience and the things that we've
Not
gone
even
through
that.
as a family. Well, and so obviously every single family is going to have their unique experience. They're going to have, you know, things that come along with their own family dynamic that we won't understand. And so that's why all we can do is we attempt to create community, and we create a space where, you know, people who have, you know, more in common with your family, you can really interact with them and kind of draw wisdom from the community. So I would say that's probably the best thing that you can do when it comes to, you know, that.
So
Thank
I
you.
want to ask you guys, how did the conversation about worldview sit with you? Is that something that you've considered before as something that you should take on as a family, or is this the first time you're considering it, or does it feel okay to go there with your family? Let's converse.
I'll add something. I'm actually kind of a unique homeschooler, and that I'm a faith-based homeschooler in the United States, but I don't follow what would be considered the dominant faith in the United States of America. So I'm raising a son, and we're on an Eastern spiritual path. You know, we practice yoga and meditation, but it's not a typical thing among homeschoolers. So we've had lots of conversations early because we live in a spiritual community and we're really different from the rest of the world, and just, you know, 10 miles from us. So yeah, we've started worldview conversations early, and we've traveled quite a bit with our son. We've only taken him one place internationally, but as he gets older, we hope to do more.
Wonderful. That's amazing. And the richness of who you are makes the community also quite rich.
And that's what I'm really trying to, I think, focus on with him, is that when you come from a place of integrity and centeredness in yourself, you can then relate to others. And it's not from a place of, I'm so great and you're not, you know, or I've got it and you don't. It's like, this is mine, and I'm going to relate now to your center and what's yours, and we can meet in between it, and we can respect the uniqueness in each of us, but also see, like Miro was saying, you know, the commonality is in humanity.
Yeah, beautiful. And I like that. I think about worldviews as the lenses, but what happens when you remove all those lenses? You get to the center, and I think it's a beautiful analogy. Thank you. I will incorporate that into my sort of thing now, so thank you. Cool. Yeah, Lika, I really like your reflection that numerous ways to approach things, and no right or no wrong, just different. And if you're having those conversations in your family when your kids are young, it becomes habit to start thinking like that. Cool.
Hi, Lainie. I have a question that I wanted to ask you guys. For those of us that kind of struggle to step out of our comfort zone, what advice would you provide for us? I understand all the huge benefits of world schooling. I mean, even before you guys shared all these amazing stories, but you know,
Oh, well,
before
okay.
you started traveling, what was it that kind of maybe helped give you that push?
So for me, I look at the world, I look at everything that I do, the way that I move through the world, as, well, I need tools to help me move through it. I'm one of those people that needs to have something defined so I can wrap my head around it in order to understand the paradigm that I'm functioning within. Okay. So to me, that's what I call a tool. So once I understood and we started living the concept of comfort zone, the comfort zone is the center, and that's the place where we are most comfortable. We don't get a lot, we don't do a lot there. This is the place where we come back and retreat to. So the tool that I use is adding a ring outside of that, and we call that the stretch zone. So a lot of people just refer to that as outside of your comfort zone, in or out. Well, for me, when I reframe that to my stretch zone, that gave me power and permission to feel uncomfortable because I'm stretching, because I'm learning, because I'm not in my comfort zone, I'm growing. And that helped me reframe everything. And I needed to understand that there's a space outside of the stretch zone, another large concentric ring called the panic zone. And I don't want to go there, but we end up going there. And that's where fight, flight, or freeze kicks in. And that's not a good time to make decisions or to be in a space of learning. And that's something that we all, as humans, enter into. And guess what? Successfully leave. So we know that from a logical tool perspective, we're not there always. It's just a really shitty place to be. So we aim for what we call our stretch zone. And if you come to our talk on Sunday, where we talk about creating your family themes, this became the tool or one of our themes that we refer to a lot. And in partnership, my son and I, especially when he was younger, like we needed to have these tools as something that we could dialogue about, that we had conversation and we had language to talk about. So we now know what these things are called. We have a frame of reference, and the tool for us is being able to use the language to call it what it is. So when we're there, we know what to call it. So I hope that helps.
Yeah, from my personal experience, this language was incredibly helpful. So I've always been something of a timid kid when I was growing up. I am by nature an overthinker. And having this language really kind of enabled me to actually, make steps towards something that I once perceived as just being outside of my comfort zone, something that was unattainable. But being able to basically create a space and being able to define what that space is and what the intention is when you move into that space as well, that really helped me in my own development, because suddenly I had progress. I had a place where I could go, and that was the stretch zone. I wasn't just plunging myself into something which could be beneficial, something which could harm me. I suddenly had the language to say, okay, well, I can try this, and then I can identify the discomfort. Is it discomfort, or is it fear? Is it like, is my amygdala going off? Like what's happening? So having this language was, something that actually enabled me to kind of grow out of that.
So when you say language, you're talking about the comfort zone, the stretch zone, and the panic zone.
Yep.
Mhm.
these actual like this verbiage that you're using
Yes.
and these conversations that you're having with each other and between mother and son
Yes.
and talking about your adventures and where this would lead you, that sort of thing.
Right.
Yes. And we always did a lot of reflection, a lot of sort of debriefing, like, what did we do today? Well, how did that feel? I'm one of those really talky sort of philosophical, let's call everything in order for me to frame it. Like, that's just how I am. Some people are not like that, but that's how I am. And so that's what he got in a mom.
But I think you guys are right that it's really important to have that language, or else you can't explain yourself. If you can't explain yourself, how can you have that intentionality and get to where you want to be?
And then practicing it as a family, practicing it. And then what Miro said was he got to practice his entire childhood, his entire adolescence, what it felt like to be uncomfortable. And that was huge.
That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. Any other questions? We have like 3 minutes. Please feel free to just unmute yourself. I feel kind of bad that I didn't give you as many tools as I wanted to give you, but in terms of really think about story. Story is so important.
Really, I would just want to say that the most important thing right now, there isn't one specific thing that we can tell you just to do, and suddenly that will be some holistic, experience. Right now, the main thing that you can do is clarify the language surrounding your own mindset. And I know that maybe sounds a little vague, but I think that the more work that we do upon how we understand and make sense of the world in such a confusing time, the more progress we're going to be able to make despite what's happening. And I think that really is, the most important thing to keep an eye on.
Lika, I challenge you to spend a week with just forks, a week with just chopsticks, and a week of just
I asked you to your volume.
Sorry. Erica, did you say something? Sorry.
I wanted to, but I'm sitting in the room with Mike and he won't turn his phone off. So it was actually a great presentation. I appreciated it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Really fantastic.
Thank you, Erica. I have to tell you, after your presentation, I was like, I can't go after her. I have to remember never to go after Erica again. I just can't do it. I was just so it was so intense and so fabulous and so wonderful. But thank you. That means
you did a great job. You did a great job. And thank you for talking about family culture and how having a family culture and what your family culture is makes it easier for you to enter other people's culture, because then you have a language that you can deal with and that you can use to understand each other and therefore make yourself more understood by others. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Absolutely.
Are both of you ladies' talks going to be available later in recording?
I hope so, yeah.
I see this one is being recorded. Erica, did you record yours?
Erica's was not recorded.
Oh, darn it. We were having dinner and we missed the last two. I just joined.
It was, we left that one unrecorded for privacy.
I totally understand why.
Makes sense.
And I've been in that talk. I was in that talk. It was the race one, right?
Yeah.
Yes, I was in it last year, but I wanted to join this year too, but we're at dinner. So I will come back and I will watch the Worldschooling one later since it's recorded. Thank you, ladies.
Of course. Thank you. Were there any other questions before they kick us out? No. Well, I appreciate everybody's time. I really do. Feel free to reach out to either Miro or myself if you have any questions, and we are happy to support you in any way that we possibly can. And join the website. I gave you the free link. So there's a lot of stuff there about storytelling, about music, about bringing science in, you know, all this stuff that you can do from your home today. So
Lainie, have you either of you guys written a book?
not yet. One day.
Is it on the radar?
One day. It'll happen one day. I've contributed to other people's books, you know, chapters and yeah, one day I'll write one, but not now. Miro's got to write one too, or 3 or 4. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet.
Cool. Thank you. All right, guys. Thank
you, everyone.
All right. Hopefully we'll see some of you on Sunday too. Okay. Bye. Thank you. And
Thank you, Lainie.
Thank you, Lainie.
Lainie. Thank you both.
Thanks, Lainie. Thanks, Miro.
My pleasure.